A young person may or may not know his congressman's name, but he knows the name of the person who makes the music he likes.
For more than half a century, Bob Phillips has been on the ultimate road trip, traversing the back roads of Texas, uncovering the uplifting stories of ordinary Americans doing exceptional things with their lives.
You point and I'll catch a chicken, okay? And I know where they run because I think like a chicken.
But in a world where more power is given to negative news, Texas Country Reporter has become the longest-running independent TV show in the nation. Bob is now in his 51st year of telling positive, heartwarming tales of great, unsung Texans.
I found a way to live life rather simply. And that wouldn't do for everybody, Bob, but it does for me.
His one-of-a-kind journey through the television industry began in 1969 in his hometown of Dallas. Bob's high school journalism teacher convinced him that he had a real talent for storytelling, which he should pursue in college. And not long after he enrolled, local TV legend Eddie Barker, news director and primary anchor for Channel 4, paid a life-changing visit to one of his classes.
He was the guy when John F. Kennedy was assassinated on the streets of downtown Dallas. Eddie Barker was the first person to go on television and say, "The president is dead." That's the man who was talking in my Journalism 101 class when I'm 18 years old, a first semester freshman in college. And I went, that's the guy right there. I need to know him. I gave him 30 minutes to get back to his office. And I called him and he said, "Come over tomorrow morning and let's talk." I went to the TV station. He hired me for, basically it was a gopher, go for this, go for that. I sat in this little room listening to the police and fire radios, anything that was going on. And that's how I started.
Just 1 month in, Bob was promoted to news photographer. And at the age of 18, with less than 3 months on the job, the one-time poor kid from Old East Dallas reported his first story on the evening news in the 11th largest market in the nation.
Next, Channel 4 News, recorded earlier this evening as a special service for our late-night viewers.
I also became a news reporter. I'm covering fires and wrecks and city council meetings and school board meetings and politics. But early on in that time, I started realizing this isn't my idea of what I really want to do. Part of my job was every night I watched the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite. He had this guy named Charles Kuralt who was traveling all over America doing positive stories about just ordinary people. It was called On the Road with Charles Kuralt. And the more I watched it, the more I thought, oh my gosh, he's got my job. I'm supposed to be doing that. The dots started connecting in my tiny little brain, and I started asking my news director, could I do some of those stories for the news?
In 1972, after pleading with KDFW management for months, Bob Phillips learned that his idea for a half-hour show based on ordinary people doing extraordinary things with their lives would finally become a reality.
Nobody ever told me to stop, so I didn't. I just kept doing it. And I didn't know whether the job was really mine or not, because you give it a try isn't exactly an endorsement of, but I just kept doing it.
With Bob's uncanny ability to unearth the greatest hidden treasures found in the most unlikely corners of the Lone Star State, the show provided viewers with a constant source of wonderment and discovery. Every week, there was a chance to experience new uplifting stories and must-see destinations hidden off the beaten path. But by the mid-'80s, Bob started to feel constricted by the limited reach of the designated market area in northern Texas. And he knew that if he could just somehow broadcast across the entire state, he'd be able to share more heartfelt, remarkable stories with more engrossed viewers. In 1986, he decided to leave the news business and start his own production company, where he was free to make Texas Country Reporter what he had always envisioned it to be.
The show was very successful. We had incredible blockbuster ratings, which, people just, they really turned on to this idea of covering small towns, ranches, farms, rural America, and positive stories about people's lives. That's it was something they were craving, I think. They're still craving it because we still are doing it 50 years later, and they're still watching.
For 50 years now, Texas Country Reporter has generated business for thousands of rural Texas retailers and restaurants and created new, lasting friendships along the way. Today, this now famous line,
Just pop in and travel with
"Pop
me."
in and travel with us," will forever be immortalized in Texas history. And its creator has joined just a handful of people on a rare distinguished list. The National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences is proud to welcome Bob Phillips to the Lone Star Emmy Gold Circle for more than 50 years of television excellence.
In my 50-plus years in this business, I've been a photographer, reporter, assignments editor, producer, and anchor. I've traveled for more than a decade with the Dallas Cowboys, shot on the sidelines for NFL films, and traveled with and was mentored by the great Charles Kuralt. And somewhere along the way, I discovered that my passion is to tell the stories of ordinary, real people that I find in small towns, on the back roads. These are people who are not famous or part of today's pop news culture, but who, in some way, live extraordinary lives. And to me, the stories they share are the first draft of our history. It's my hope that someday their stories will be beneficial to future generations as they try to understand what our culture was all about, because those stories truly are the voices of the people that I call the salt of the earth. I want to thank Natus and the Lone Star Emmy organization for honoring my career. And I want to thank all the people who have worked alongside of me these past 50 years to make TCR all that it has become. But mostly, I want to thank the audience that never seems to tire of seeing and hearing stories about good people living good lives.